All right, what's up? What's up? YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you watching this on, probably gonna be on both. But this Turnbow, I'm just making this video. It's a video I had the idea to make a while ago. Can't even really tell you why I never did, but just something it's just been on my mind like real heavy. Always, it's always replaying in my mind stuff I'm always thinking about. But this video is called My Personal Journey Through Consciousness. So over the years, all the different stuff that I've learned, how my perspective, my paradigm has evolved over time, the growth that I've been through. I feel like I feel like it's kind of interesting. You know what I'm saying? It may or may not be to you. People may or may not watch this video. That's cool. Regardless. You may or may not get something from it. I mean, I hope maybe you do. It can help you in some way, but it's just something that I just feel I need to share or I want to share. I've been wanting to, never did, but I am now. So, my personal journey through consciousness. Um, I've always been, I've always been more on the rational side of things. When I was younger, in school, real good at math and science. That was kind of like my thing. Um, and I used to that's just what made sense to me. I never really, I used to go to church with my family and stuff, but it never really, when you're a kid, you're doing it, you're going through the motions, you're doing it because your mama tell you to do it, your sister doing it, whatever. But I didn't really have that in here. I had a lot of questions people couldn't answer. Science is what made sense to me. So I used to like to watch the Discovery Channel and all the shows about planets and all of that. I remember one time I might have been like 14 or I was real young, and I was thinking one day like, what's a black hole? You know what I mean? Like we know people talk about black holes, or I think I might have saw it on TV or whatever. A black hole, like what is that? You know what I'm saying? Who really knows? But I don't know. My curiosity it made me want to know, and we had this encyclopedia set in my house, and I went and grabbed it and started reading. The internet wasn't like a real big thing back then, but I looked it up online. That's how I came to learn about, Einstein. Like everybody know who Einstein is, but they can't really tell you what he's famous for, like what he did in the science community. So that was kind of like my start in science and understanding, like, thinking about big concepts and just pondering stuff that we don't have absolute answers for, but people speculate on. But anyway. So, the start of it all, really, though, when I was 19, I had an experience. I won't go too deep into it, but I mean, I had reached a point, I was at a tough time, and I reached a point where um, I just was like, I can't pretend no more. I can't fake. Like, if it's somebody out there, if it's some type of force, power, God, whatever, like, I need you to help me right now. I need you to show yourself. I need you to appear, something like I can't, I can't pretend no more like I got it all together, like I got it figured out, like I know what I'm doing. I don't. I'm lost right now. You know what I'm saying? I remember sitting in my car, my first car, just kind of saying that out loud, like, where are you? Like, you know, what I've been doing ain't working. I need some help. And man, it was either that same day or the next day. I wish I was journaling back then, and I would have wrote that down because that would have been something to remember for real. But either that next day or the same day, I had an experience where I just kind of knew it hit me, and it was like I knew without a doubt that God was real. It was no doubt in my mind at the time, and I had never felt that way before, but this was the first time. So, and they got the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I had been presented with a teacher, and that old saying came to be true that day because I was ready. I was ready to receive new information, and somebody was presented to me who was giving me what I needed, what I hungered for, what I thirsted for, and it was just so crazy. I remember at one point, when I was younger, a little younger, like I opened up the Bible one day, tried to read. I couldn't even get past the first page, like the first or second page. Like, this is ridiculous. I can't. How do I know that any of this is true? This don't even make no sense. But now I'm at a point where I just believe every single word of it is true. I can't stop reading it. It's funny because I actually I was in school, I was in college. I had an exam the next day, a final for a class. I was on the rocks with it. All was coming down to this final, and it's like, man, I need to pass this final to pass this class. And I couldn't. I didn't study for my final because I couldn't stop reading the Bible, because I, for the first time in my life, felt that it was 100% true, and that this was like true wisdom, knowledge, information that I had been missing. And I couldn't put it down. And I didn't study for my final. And the next day, took the final, failed it miserably, failed the class, had to retake it over the summer. But looking back, I probably would have did it all the same. But anyway, so this teacher though, and this new information that I got presented with, this was I got introduced to the messianic viewpoint, right? The messianic. So it's like the Hebrew gospel. It's very similar to Christianity in a lot of ways, minus the and I kind of hate to use this word now, but the pagan religion or holidays, right? So they tell you the truth about Christmas. This is where Christmas really come from. Ain't got nothing to do with Jesus being born. This is the truth of Easter. Ain't got nothing to do with blah, blah, blah. He was really getting it back into the Jewish roots, as they say, restoring the Hebrew roots of the faith. Side note, I ain't talking about Hebrew Israelites. I was never that. I was never down with that. I'm not down with that. Nah, them dudes, Shay, if you that, shout out to you, but they kind of crazy to me. So it wasn't a Hebrew Israelite, but if you look up messianic, the messianic movement, I think you'll see. And the man's name is Michael Rood. You can look him up on YouTube. Michael Rood. Look at some of his older stuff. Everything he do now is like, talk show kind of stuff. He got topics or whatever, but the older videos were like the informational one. So, he was just presenting information I had never heard before. He could speak multiple languages. He spoke the Hebrew. He could speak Greek. He would sit there with the book, with the Hebrew translation, with the Greek translation, and he would go through and say, this is what it's saying English, this is what it's saying Hebrew, Greek, this is what it's saying Hebrew. Here are the true definitions of these words. This is a mistranslation. This is what this really means. Breaking down the culture, like really bringing it to life. And I'm just like, man, it was hitting me like, the pastor ain't gonna never. I ain't never heard this in the church. Like he was getting with it. You know what I'm saying? Like he was really getting into it, switching the languages up, and what I'm saying, really just getting deep in it. I'm like, that you catching my attention now. The stuff the people they be talking about in church, the pastors, y'all losing me. He getting into it factually, reasonably, scientifically, which is what appeals to me. So that was working for me, and I'm like, man, I was eating it up. So much every day. And even to this day, I mean, I don't speak Hebrew, but just from so much time that I put in studying that, I know certain words or certain things. I see ride past a church, and the church name would be like a Hebrew name spelled out in English letters. But I'd be like, yeah, that's a Hebrew word. That mean da da da. Like, I remember that from studying, doing all the messianic studies. So yeah, I was real into that. Believer in Yeshua, right? Not Jesus, but Yeshua. When I found that out, Yeshua was the real name, not Jesus, which is Greek. That was the most mind-blowing, revolutionary, oh my God, information, you know what I'm saying, at the time. That and, Christmas and the astrology of December 25th and all that. It was the most unbelievable information I had ever got. But, that's like religion 101 now. That's like the most basic thing. That's what you teach somebody who's trapped mentally in that and you trying to bring them out of it. That's the first thing you get into. You know what I'm saying? Show them some facts with the astrology and how much of everything, all these myths and stories are based on planetary movements. So yeah, I got real deep into that. It was giving me what I wanted, but as time went on, I I continue to progress and learn more. And eventually it got to the point where I'm past the basics now, right? You giving me the basics, just something for me to grasp onto or whatever. But see, now I'm getting into specifics. I get to asking a lot of questions. That's the scientific mind again. I'm into details, not just the general broad view. I'm talking about specifics, details. I'm really trying to piece the whole puzzle together. And eventually it got to a point where it wasn't working for me no more. I had learned a lot, but I felt like I was in a box still, though. Mentally, like I came up, but then I hit a ceiling, and it was like, this not working for me no more. I'm limited. It's not giving me what I need. It's not answering all my questions no more. At one point in time, it was answering all my questions, but nah, some of this ain't adding up. It ain't making sense, right? So, um, but I was still, and also too, yeah, just what my personal life experiences were showing me about how the way the world works versus how this book would have me believe the way the world works. They not matching up. It was a disconnect. But I was still, real strong in it. Me just being me, how I am. If I'm gonna profess my belief in something, I gotta be hardcore with it. I'm not gonna half-ass. So, I want the specifics. If somebody try to come against my belief, I'm ready to drop facts on your head. So me getting into spirituality and God, what it made me do is it made me want to learn every other religion, just so I could put them together and compare them and say, okay, this is why this one is right and this one ain't wrong. And if anybody ever try to say something to me about it, I already got my answer. You're not gonna show me up. You're not gonna make me lose face with this type of information. And then I started looking into the Eastern religions, right? I never really knew nothing about them. Never looked into them too deep. And I watched this video on Buddhism real quick from this monk guy, and it was like maybe a 10-minute video. And after I was done watching it, it was like, man, everything he said just making way too much sense. This dude is making way too much sense, and it's like blowing some shit out the water with this Abrahamic stuff that just ain't cutting it for me. So that kind of opened up a new door, and I was in a in between phase. I wasn't really sure, what was true, what was real. But I just kept learning, and then in 2013 January, I watched a video called Metaphysics of the Bible by Dr. Phil Valentine. And that it ain't never been the same since. That was exactly what I needed. You know what I'm saying? It was like it took me to the next level. He was speaking to me like deep with that. And he's coming from an African perspective. This guy who was doing the Hebrew stuff, he wasn't even a Jew. He was from Michigan, but he was a white man who converted to the Judaism and grew his beard out and all of that. But he was a white man himself from Grand Rapids. He wasn't speaking. He let him tell it. The true Jews of the world are these Ashkenazis and the people who call themselves Jews now. But there's a lot to be said about that. So I got somebody now who's speaking from an African perspective, which is resonating with me more. He's getting into the mind science like the Buddhism man was, but he ain't so high in mind like, oh, the Buddhism guy had me believe like, oh, sex is bad. Like, if you're still chasing sex, or you're you're not enlightened enough, versus like, man, ain't nothing wrong with that. We humans, that ain't the African way to just be so enlightened. We ain't chasing, you don't want to procreate, or you don't want a woman or something like that. Metaphysics of the Bible changed the game up. I had classes that day. It was a 4-hour lecture. I skipped class and watched the whole 4 hours straight through. Like, I was taking notes, everything. So, Phil Valentine, that's always going to be like one of my people who I love to listen to. Um, Real deep metaphysical teacher, healer, been doing this, one of the OGs of the conscious scene, and I don't even like using that word no more because people then kind of made it into a joke. But Phil Valentine is the truth. So I got into that. I started learning about the mystery systems, right, and everything, all the Egyptian sciences, the Hotepism, right, what people will call it today, right, in 2017, the Hotep stuff, which is deep, hermetics. And this was around the same time all the law of attraction was real big, right? So I mean that's kind of that's like a segue, like a gateway into it, understanding, getting into law of attraction, like what happens in my life as a result of the thoughts that I'm thinking and the things that I'm doing, and not a result of just some higher power that I'm just at. You know, I'm just, you know, whatever happens to me is what you want to happen to me. I have no control. At your whim, stuff happens to me. But when you think that way, you giving your power away. You don't have to take no responsibility. You a victim. If something bad happened to you, oh well, hey, that's what God wanted. Versus this is saying if something bad happened to you, it's your fault. But in turn, you have the power to change it, right? So this is giving you the law of attraction kind of mentality. It's giving you your power back and saying you control your life. You gonna make what happens. You making stuff happen and not happen in your life. Um, but the law of attraction stuff is still pretty watered down. We talking, that's all a lesser version of the hermetic science and the mind science and everything, right? So I got real deep into that. I was always into math, so naturally I got into sacred geometry, different patterns. Came across the tree of life pattern, and then come to find out, oh, this is Kabbalah. This is what Kabbalah is based off of. This is what Hermetics. To me, Kabbalah and Hermetics really the same thing. I can't really tell the difference. Some people say they're not. If anything, really, I guess it's just, to me, Hermetics is a little more like Egyptian, and it's what it reveres, and Kabbalah is like the Jewish. But they're really the same thing. They both based off the tree of life and that science, the Western science. So I was real deep into that for a long time, growing with that, understanding. Probably one of the best teachers, people out there to even speak on the subject, aside from Phil Valentine, is A.A. Rashid. Dude break down the Kabbalah like nobody else. And he actually had a series on YouTube called Intro to Kabbalah. They took that down. I don't know why, but he was getting in deep on that. We got other ones, but the intro boy, he was going in. That was a good one. So yeah, I'm learning that. I'm learning the mind science. I'm learning the universal science, these principles, Kabbalah, the ancient societies. Then I get into the Moorish thing, and where the Moorish science changed the game was with the law, studying law and understanding that, because you got the spiritual laws, but then you got the man-made laws which derive from that. And if you understand the higher versions, it make the man-made, the lesser ones, that much more easy to understand, right? So got into the Moorish thing, learning the history. Oh, okay, black people for the most part don't know nothing about their history beyond slavery. You just think you came from a slave and you don't know nothing beyond that. We got robbed, denationalized